Welcome to the Intentional Man Podcast, a podcast that inspires and equips men to lead lives of intentionality and grow to their full potential. I'm your host, Jonathan McGinley, a life coach that helps men just like you create the life that you want and live a story of significance through my coaching and tools on intentionality. Thanks for joining, and welcome to the show. Hello, and welcome to the Intentional Man Podcast. This is our first interview episode of 2023, and I couldn't be more excited to have my guest, Mike Mitchell, on today. Mike, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Jonathan. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thank you so much for being here. Mike, I got to meet Mike earlier in 2022, and just instantly just fell in love with him and what he's doing. And just the man that he is, and just really look up to him in a lot of ways. And so I asked him to come on the show. He has been running a leadership company for about 16, 17 years now, really helping individuals grow as leaders. And I actually just went through one of his leadership cohorts this last year, and it was incredibly impactful on my life. I took a ton away from it. So I wanted to be able to share that with you guys today. So anyway, Mike, thank you for everything that you do and for your time. And I'm excited to dive in and talk about leadership today.
Excellent.
Yeah, awesome. Well, let's just jump in. So kind of, Mike, when did you learn the importance of really leading well?
Oh, great question. Well, early on, I think somewhere along the way, I sort of knew, even as a kid, as a teenager, that I was a leader. My dad was a career military officer, and so I had this thought process, and I was sort of challenged to lead, and found myself leading in school and leading in the sports endeavors that I had and people that I was around, and so I had that sort of sense, growing up, that, okay, I didn't know exactly what it was, but I knew that I was sort of supposed to lead, and sort of felt that. And then what I found is, as it turns out, I went into the military as an engineer. I went into the Air Force. And what I very, very quickly figured out in my military career was that my technical skills were absolutely irrelevant if I couldn't lead people.
Yeah.
And so I had a very, very interesting experience around that. I was a project manager for weapon system development programs. And the first program that I was given was to do training systems on the F-22. Now, this was back before the F-22 was even designated the F-22. It was called the Advanced Tactical Fighter at the time. Mm-hmm. Well, the military, in its infinite wisdom, has a tendency to take and build new weapon systems, and we deploy them to the field. And once there's rubber on the ramp, right, or in other words, they're out there in the field, somebody asks the question, well, how are we going to train the people that are going to use and maintain this equipment? And fortunately, somebody on the F-22 program early on said, hey, let's not make that mistake again. Yeah. Let's think about this early on. And so as a young project manager, they hand this to me and they say, hey, we're going to go try to figure out how to do training systems early in this program so that we don't face that dilemma. So nobody's ever done this before, so there's no rules. Right. And right. Secondly, then they gave me a project team, right? A group of people on my team in the government. There's about 40 people on the team from the various major commands who were participating in the program. And every single one of the people on that team were senior to me, and not a single one of them reported to me.
Yeah.
And so what I learned almost immediately was, wait a minute, it's my job to get this done. Again, no rules. Nobody has to do anything that I say. So I very quickly figured out that I have to get these people to want to do what it is that I believe needs to be done. And again, I didn't have a playbook that I got to hand out and say, okay, here's the playbook. Everybody follow the playbook.
Yeah, yeah.
It was an environment of figuring out what are the plays as we go along.
Right,
and so I learned very, very quickly, okay, my job was not to be competent in training systems, right, and simulators and training equipment and all that kind of stuff. My job was to be competent as a leader. In getting a team of people to collaborate in order to get an outcome achieved.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that was the framework for how I learned about leadership. And I learned it, and it was very much in the deep end you go.
Yeah,
and
as
a military officer, they made it clear that's what they wanted me to do.
Wow, that's amazing. So you really just got thrust into this role without even really feeling fully equipped. So, I mean, did you feel equipped as a leader in that moment, or was this kind of one of those, I got to kind of figure this out on the
Oh no.
fly?
Oh
Yeah.
no, it was absolutely go figure it out. Now I had
Yep.
lots of great leaders around me that I could rely on and who coached me and helped me, but fundamentally, yeah, it was here you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
And some general marching orders and go figure it out.
Yeah. So, I mean, in that moment, did you feel like a leader? Like, was that something that you had taken on as your identity or something that you felt was one of your skills before that moment? Or was this kind of the first time you were like, oh, wow, I need to, focus on leadership here?
Great question. I think that again, with my background, I had some sense that says, okay, leadership is important. Again, my dad was a career Air Force officer, so I got that. I'd hung around,
Yeah.
military people all of my life, so I understood that fundamental premise. But I didn't have as strong an understanding of the fact that leadership is not about directing people.
Mm,
Okay, that leadership is not about a big L, a leadership title that says because you have this title, you have this authority to get things done.
right.
Okay, what I learned was exactly the opposite. That leadership is about getting people to want to get done what you believe needs to get done.
Uh-huh.
And that it didn't matter that I only had these little gold bars on my shoulders, right? That those little
Yep.
gold bars had nothing to do with whether or not I could succeed at leading this group of people who were very senior to me.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was going to ask, because that's interesting, to be thrust in this position. You're a young guy and you
Mm-hmm.
got these people who are senior to you. So did they view you as a credible leader coming in off the bat?
Oh,
Or
great
that's,
question. At first, not really. Okay.
yeah.
Now, they respected the fact that the role that I had as the project manager was that I had certain roles to fulfill
Uh-huh.
and that I needed to get certain things done. And so I think that there was a level of respect for the position that I was in. However, they did see, wait a minute, I didn't have a whole lot of technical expertise. I was wandering into areas that I didn't have any real experience,
Mm-hmm.
but I was then therefore in a position that says I had to earn that respect.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and over time, that respect and credibility started to build to the point where I could start to make decisions and people would execute based on the decisions that I was making.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And but yeah, it took a while to build that credibility.
For sure. Yeah. Well, and I think in our lives, especially as men, like I think there's going to be all these moments throughout our life where we're thrust in these positions of influence or leadership where we may not feel equipped, or maybe we're the young person and there's people above us. So I'm curious of like when did it click for you as a leader in that situation that, you really started to gain these guys' respect and you felt like you were actually directing it? Kind of when did that happen and how did it happen? What were some of the elements of that shift where you really felt like the people were bought in?
Well, I mean, really very interesting turning point. One of the things that I learned again, being growing up around the military, my perception was that as an officer, right, they own my 24/7.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I just assumed that a 50 to 60 hour work week was standard, and that traveling, right, I had to travel a lot, and I traveled on my time, not during business hours, right? It was you do what you had to do. Well, I had a number of government civilians on my team. Well, that was not their attitude.
Yeah.
We traveled back and forth from Dayton, Ohio to Los Angeles with some frequency, and to visit the contractors that were working the program. And so my thought was, okay, we'll schedule meetings for Tuesday morning in Los Angeles. I'll work a full day in Dayton on Monday, and then I'll catch an evening airplane, check into the hotel late that night, and then be ready to go first thing the next morning. Well, the civil servants on my team, their attitude was, no, Monday's travel day.
Yep.
So they caught an 8 a.m. airplane on Monday morning out, right, to get to Los Angeles. And by the way, we had a 3-hour time difference, so they gained 3 hours in the process and spent the afternoon on the beach on Monday afternoon.
Yeah.
Okay, while I was at the office working, right? don't try to schedule a meeting on Monday afternoon. Okay, because we're traveling. Well, I had to get used to that thought process. And that was one of the things that made me recognize, wait a minute, I've got to get them to volunteer to follow. I could say, wait a minute, this is what's expected of you, but that doesn't mean that they were going to comply with that thought process. And so I very quickly learned, okay, what are the battles that I want to fight? What are the things that are really, really important to get them to want to do? Because traveling the way that I traveled was not that important in the grand scheme of things. Yeah, I may have been losing some time in productivity because I didn't have my team in the office on Monday. They were traveling on a day where I was trying to work and then traveling that evening, but it was what it was. Right. And so I think that was one of the pivotal points where I started to realize, okay, I can't exercise any sort of authority to change these behaviors. If I want them to go the extra mile for me because we need to be in one city today and in another city tomorrow, and that means we need to travel this evening, then I need to get them to volunteer to do that. And because they have respect and trust and confidence in me.
Yeah, interesting. Well, yeah, and I heard you say that a lot of they have to volunteer. You have to get them to want to do what you believe needs to be done. So that seems like that was a pretty big aha moment for you where it was like, I can't just use authority here. That is a layer of leadership, but ultimately leadership is getting people to want to do what you believe needs to be done, right? Was that kind of the big flip?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And when we get to that place and we start to recognize no matter how much leadership authority we might have, okay, it's not really important. What's important is our ability to influence the behavior of other people. And great leaders who have lots and lots of authority rarely exercise it. Okay, because number one, they don't have to. And number two, they know that they pay a price whenever they do.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
That's really good.
That's how I flipped that switch, and it made a fundamental difference in the way that I approached my team and the things that I was trying to get done.
Absolutely. That's huge. And me and you have both heard, John Maxwell say leadership is influence, nothing else, nothing less. It's influence. So I think that's great. And I know you're passionate about helping individuals really grow as leaders, and whether they're, CEO level or just regular level employees in the company. So tell me about that. Where did that kind of passion for teaching leadership and really just on an individual level, where did that come from for you?
Great question, Jonathan. I started out believing and developing my leadership skills for the purposes of making myself more successful as a leader. And I thought that running organizations and running projects was what I was supposed to do, that was my gifting. That's what I was supposed to do. And I kept developing my own skills for the purposes of making that happen, to be more and more successful, running larger organizations, being responsible for higher budgets, all those kind of things. Somewhere along the way, I started to realize that wasn't what I loved. That what I loved was helping people lead, right? I didn't enjoy working in the business. I enjoyed working on the business, developing leadership skills, developing teams, developing process, building infrastructure. It wasn't worrying about getting the project over the finish line at the right point in time or juggling all these balls of all these resources. That wasn't the interesting part of it. I could do all that stuff and I was successful doing so. But I realized that what I loved to do was help develop that. But one of the setbacks that I did have in the military was I worked for a general who said, those who can do and those who can't teach.
Right.
Okay, that little phrase really impacted me because as I started to have this identity crisis around what is it I really want to do and what do I think my passions are, that little word was hanging in the background. And I kept saying, okay, I have to prove that I can do. I have to prove that I can do. I have to prove that I can do. And I finally realized, wait a minute, that's just I've proven that I can do. Let's get on with doing something I'm really passionate about doing.
Yeah.
And that's when I started to make the shift. out of taking on executive level leadership roles and taking on the role of developing skills. And as I started my business, I worked with a lot of business owners, predominantly smaller business owners, but people that own their own business were running sizable organizations, and I enjoyed doing that. Because it's really cool when you watch a leader that has that kind of opportunity for influence, you get them to help make a change. And now that sort of ripples through their organization, it's pretty significant. But what I found working with other people, okay, people like me that as a young military officer, I said, wait a minute, I can't get this done. I don't have the authority. Well, we do. It doesn't matter where you are in an organization. The reality is you do have the authority. If you develop the leadership skill to get people to volunteer to follow you, no matter how big L leadership title you've got.
Right.
Okay. And so when I get to that place, when I'm in a place helping a younger person or a person who's trapped in a pyramid, so to speak, right? Of I can't get anything done because all of these people and constraints around me. When that individual starts to lead, whether it's leading their boss or leading their peers or leading a customer or wherever that influence is starting to happen, when that aha goes off, it's life-changing. Okay, it may not make that big a difference to as many people as a corporate CEO making that, okay, well, I can do this better. But for an individual who's in that place, and now all of a sudden they feel empowered to do something instead of being trapped and being a victim of where they fit in the hierarchy.
It's a game changer.
Now that's life-changing. Okay,
yes.
It changes everything.
Yes.
And so that's one of the reasons that I love working with individual contributors and people at lower levels or people that are aspiring to a higher leadership role, helping them learn and grow in that. Yeah, I still do a good bit of work with CEOs, but boy, is it fun working with average Joe leaders. Okay, people that don't necessarily see themselves as a leader because nobody's dubbed them with a title.
Yeah.
Leadership isn't a title.
Yep. Oh, that's so good. And it's just amazing hearing your passion. I can just tell that you really do care about this and love this. And I think that really is life-changing when you realize that you do have, opportunities to influence people in your company, whether their, title is above you or below you or whatever it is, that you can develop skills and you can develop qualities that give you power to really have influence in the organization and to just have more ownership of it. I think that's a big life change there. If you're like, I'm just reacting to everything in my life that's thrown at me from the top, and I just am, under these set of rules and this and that. But then once you change and you realize like, oh, okay, I actually do have some influence in the company more than I think. I think that really can be pretty life changing. So like, can you build on that a little bit too, of just because I think sometimes we hear as an individual, you should be developing leadership qualities. It's really important to develop influence. Can you just like speak into that of exactly why me as an average Joe would need to care about growing in my leadership abilities?
You bet. Well, Jonathan, you referenced John Maxwell, right? And I'm a big Maxwell fan, and so the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership. The first law is called the law of the lid. Okay, we in our organizations will only go as far as our leadership skills will carry us. Well, as I extend that, and I've built that into my business, what I've recognized is that leadership is not a business skill. Leadership is a life skill.
Yes.
Okay. It is every one of us, whether we want to say, some of us out there say, I don't want to be a leader. No, what you're saying is you don't want the responsibility of leading.
Right.
We all want to lead because every single one of us living in relationship with other human beings has a desire to get other people to behave in a different way that orders our worlds the way that we want our worlds ordered. Okay. I've been married to my wife for 36 years. Okay. As a Christian and a head of household, I believe I have a role that God has given me that says I need to lead my wife.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, it's my job to lead her effectively. Okay. It's not because, okay, I happen to be the husband that she's supposed to follow me.
Right.
No, it's about leading in ways that gets her to want to follow me.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, she's leading me too.
Uh-huh.
She's trying to get me to want to do what it is she believes needs to be done. Whether that's something as simple as, Michael, will you take out the trash right now?
Yeah.
Right? Or she feels like we need to be making a strategically different decision about where we're going, what we're doing with our time and our money.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. We're all trying to lead. Even if it's a customer service representative on the end of the telephone. Okay, you're trying to get that person to want to do what you believe needs to be done, which is to resolve your issue in a way that's going to be satisfactory to you.
Yeah, yeah.
Which may not be the way that their company wants them to resolve that issue for you. Leading children, okay?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How about leading parents, right? I'm taking my teenage grandchildren through the leadership challenge right now. Right?
That's awesome.
Who are their biggest leadership challenges? Their mom and dad, right? How do they get mom and dad to want to do what they believe needs to be done? So, Jonathan, to get back to your question, I believe that fundamentally developing our leadership skills influences the quality of every significant relationship in our life.
Wow.
And so if we develop that skill, then we're going to positively impact those relationships. As Bill Hybels says, when a leader gets better, everybody wins. And so I think that taking the time and engaging with people in that way makes a huge difference.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And therefore, it's not about helping a $100 million company figure out how to become a $250 million company. Do I do that? Do I help people with those kinds of leadership challenges? The answer is absolutely. But how about helping a dad navigate through the transition of a child into that 4, 5, 6-year-old stage where the why questions and the pushback and the wanting to make their own decisions starts to play in? How do you effectively lead in that environment?
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think this is huge. I love everything that you just said there, that leadership is influence and leadership is the art of getting others to want to do what you believe needs to be done. And I think that is so cool because then we all realize that we are all leaders. And so I love how you laid that out for us. And I would love to just spend the next half kind of talking about some practical leadership tools because I think you're one of the best at talking into this. So just for these guys who are just saying like, okay, I do want to identify as a leader. I want to grow. All right, let's help them get started. So tell me about the Leadership Challenge. This is a book that, you kind of use as a resource for your course, and just the 5 exemplary practices of leadership. Just kind of hit a high level, and then we'll dive into each one of those more specifically. But what exactly is the Leadership Challenge and the concepts there?
You bet. And so, Jonathan, being a student of leadership, realizing early on in my career that leadership as a skill set was the core competence that I was about developing. Okay, it was not about technical competence at the kind of programs and systems. I ran manufacturing a semiconductor equipment company. Okay, I didn't know anything about semiconductors. Okay, I knew things about how to run and manage people. Okay, and do that in effective ways. So I've always been looking for resources that would help me do that better, both for me to grow as a leader, but to help me grow the leaders around me. Because at the end of the day, that's what I was there to do. Okay. It's not what I could get done. It's what could I develop in the people around me that was going to make a difference. And so I tripped on the Leadership Challenge over 20 years ago when the book was in its 2nd edition. And by the way, next month, I believe the 7th edition is scheduled to be released. So this tool has withstood the test of time. And it's and I'm not an academic research-based guy, but it's a very, very academic and research-based methodology and thought process, and
Mm-hmm.
therefore I found it to be very, very sound. And so this content, again, boils it down to they surveyed thousands and thousands of leaders and said, tell us about when you were at your personal best as a leader. What were you doing? And then they took the followers of those leaders and they asked them the same question. They said, okay, these are the circumstances where these leaders identified it being at their best. What were they doing? Is that what you saw? Right? What did you see when they were at their best? And from that, they synthesized 5 exemplary practices that great leaders show and demonstrate when they're at their best as leaders. And those 5 practices are modeling the way, inspiring a shared vision, challenging the process, enabling others to act, and encouraging the heart. And so all leaders, in some form or another, exhibit all 5 of those practices. Some of them do some of them really, really well, and others not as well. Okay.
Right.
But generally speaking, okay, all leaders, when they're at their best in some way, shape, or form, are employing all 5 of those practices.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what that's what the program or the course that we've developed is built around, is how do we develop those 5 exemplary practices, particularly the ones that may not be our area of giftedness or our area of confidence.
Yeah, and I think this was huge for me when you kind of laid this out and said there's 5 practices, and we were looking at them, and I was like, okay, I do that one pretty well, and that one is not even on my radar. Right. And then you look at certain situations, and you're like, okay, clearly this isn't working because I'm missing 3 of these elements. Like they're not even there. And so I think that was a big aha moment for me, was like, this makes sense when you feel like you've done everything, you feel like you're trying to lead, and it's just like, I just can't see any kind of movement. And then you realize, oh, that's because I'm only doing 1 of 5 key elements of leadership. And so I think that really opened my eyes to just the possibilities in the different ways and the unique ways that you can handle each leadership situation. So I'd love to just kind of talk about, each one of these pretty quickly, just to kind of give just an overview of what they are. Again, that book is The Leadership Challenge. I'd encourage you to, first enroll in Mike's class, but otherwise read it so you can learn these in depth. But go ahead and just talk to me about Model the Way. That's the first one. What does that mean? Sure. What does that look like?
Well, so modeling the way, as it sort of connotes, is this idea that says, okay, we can't go places that we haven't demonstrated we're willing to go ourselves. Yeah. And my dad taught me this rule when I was probably 11 or 12. He said, son, never, ever ask somebody who works for you to do something that you're not willing to do yourself.
Wow.
And so modeling is about, okay, if you expect people to do something, then you need to demonstrate that you're willing to do it as well. Yeah. But it does come down to being very, very clear and unambiguous about what our core values are. What are the basis on which we make the decisions? In order to walk the talk, so to speak, there's got to be a talk to walk.
Right.
And so the first part of modeling the way is being clear about what that talk is. What are my values? What can you expect from me? How am I going to behave? And then the second part of modeling the way is actually walking the talk.
Right.
Are you in integrity doing the things that you said that you were going to do?
Yeah.
And our little premise with this, it's if you go to get aboard a bus, right? The first thing you're doing is looking up the stairs, looking at the bus driver, trying to decide, am I going to get aboard the bus? Do I trust the bus driver? That's the question we're trying to answer.
Right.
When we model the way, is we want people to say, wait a minute, that individual as a human being is trustworthy. They're clear about who they are, and they demonstrate that in the way that they execute.
That's really good. What happens if we don't model the way? Typically for followers,
it becomes very, very obvious. Okay, because we get to that place where people don't trust us, and therefore they're hedging their bets. We're saying, "Come on, let's go, take that hill," and they're going, "Wait a minute, what's going to happen if we take that hill? Are you sure we can take that hill? Are you going to be pushing me up that hill, and you're going to be standing back at the bottom of the hill with a cover over your head to make sure that you're not getting shot at while I'm?" No, people have to trust us as leaders.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where modeling the way comes in.
Mm-hmm.
They'll go the extra mile for us if we're demonstrating we're going the extra mile for them.
That's huge. That's huge. And even just thinking of leadership as an invitation, if you're inviting someone to something, you have to be doing it yourself.
Correct.
You have to be modeling the way yourself. And so I love that one. I think that is key up front. And especially, I mean, you said it over and over, it builds trust. And trust is the ultimate thing. If there's no trust between a leader and a follower, there's no relationship. And so
that's correct.
I feel like modeling the way is a huge key way in order to build trust. So talk me through, we got inspiring a shared vision. Walk us through that one.
Yeah. So inspiring a shared vision, right, is about creating a picture of the future that other people would like to see happen. Okay. We need to be visionaries. We need to set the stage for the future, because the reality is everybody wants to be part of something that's bigger than they are. We're all looking for a leader who's looking towards the future and trying to envision what could be. All right. And so our job as a leader, number one, is to work with our teams to find that vision. That's the first part, right? Because in order to inspire a shared vision, first you have to have a vision to share.
Right.
Well, the second part then is, how do we inspire others to want to be part of that vision? How do we paint a picture in a way that they see themselves in that picture and they go, I got to have it.
Yeah.
Right. This is my little Cold Stone Creamery metaphor, right? There are 3 sizes of ice cream at Cold Stone. I like it. I love it. And I got to have it.
Yep.
Inspiring a shared vision is about getting your followers to say, I got to have it. I'm going to do whatever it takes to see this vision realized.
Yes.
And that's what inspiring a shared vision is all about. That's
so good. I remember going through this, and for me, leadership, I felt was so much of, I understood this of, inspiring vision of this is where we're going, and being the motivator and being the person who can get up there and rally the troops and get them to go where you want them to go. I think the key thing that I was learning going through this was the shared part and getting people to take ownership. So can you kind of talk through that one, where it's not just your idea, but actually getting others' input and having a shared vision that people actually have some buy-in in?
You bet. So many times, right, leadership is not about, once in a while you have the extraordinary example of a leader, right, who goes up to the mountaintop and comes back with the tablets, right, and says, this is where we're going. All right. Generally speaking, it doesn't happen that way. Usually vision is a collaborative process, and it's about getting others engaged in the dialogue around it. And at the end of the day, too, Jonathan, our picture of that destination doesn't have to be the same. We could take and say, you and I could make a decision that we wanted to go on vacation together.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we could pick a destination, and your reason to want to go to that destination may be very, very different than the reason that I want to go.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's say, hey, Jonathan, let's go to Washington, D.C. Right. And you're thinking to yourself, man, I want to wander around in these halls of power and just see how these people operate. Right. Well, I'm thinking I want to go visit Arlington National Cemetery. Okay, we both could have our visions realized. We're both going to the same place, but why we're going there can be very, very different.
Yeah.
Okay, and so the process of engaging others and building the vision so that we can each discover our own unique, why do I want to go? That's collaborative. It's not mountaintop experience.
Yeah.
Right?
That's
where I think that inspiring it and building that collaboratively is so important.
Yeah, I love that. And even just thinking about that in all the examples that you gave of relationships, and as a parent and as a husband and as a friend, it's people don't respond very well when you just tell them this is what we're doing without having any sort of input. And I think we both know that, people, when you actually have skin in the game and you feel like you were a part of it and you came up with it together, like, that compels you to act way more than just being told this is what we're doing. And so I think there's a big missed opportunity there when you don't bring others in on the vision. So I love that. I think that was a huge takeaway for me, was the shared piece of vision, and instead of just casting it and trying to inspire everybody,
Yeah.
and motivate, but actually getting others' input and making it more collaborative.
Exactly.
And it applies to so many different situations. Okay. So the next we got challenge the process. What does that look like?
Challenging the process is exactly as it sort of says. Okay. Leadership is only required if change is necessary. Because the status quo is pretty good at maintaining itself, right? Leadership appears to be the art of getting other people to want to do what we believe needs to be done. Well, what we believe needs to be done is to do something that's different than what we're currently doing.
Right.
Okay. So absent the need to challenge the process, there is no need for leadership. Challenging the process is about challenging the status quo, because healthy things grow, right? There's only two states in nature. We're either growing or we're dying. Okay. And so leaders are about figuring out, how do we continuously push on how do we grow? How do we stay in that growth mode and never let ourselves get trapped or settle for the current status quo? Because the reality is the current status quo isn't really status quo.
Yeah.
It's a slow, gentle fade to death.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Because the forces of the marketplace, the forces of nature are going to act on us, whether we want it to or not.
Right. Yep.
So leadership is the force that acts on the status quo with intentionality that causes new things to happen and for growth to continue.
Yeah, that's really good.
Most of us resist change. So,
we do.
Challenging the process is quite often one of the most difficult of these exemplary practices, because people don't want to change.
Well, I love this one in terms of the theme of this show too, being called The Intentional Man, because I think it's very easy to lead well in a situation, and you kind of get it to where you want it to be in your life or in your business or whatever it is, and then you just kind of let it be. And that's what we talk a lot about in the show is, being proactive. Once you kind of get in that zone where you're just letting it be and you're just chilling with the status quo, then you start to become way more reactive. And I think you become way more passive. And that's a big temptation for us as men, is to live pretty passive lifestyles where we're just, it's easier to not deal with it. It's easier to not have vision. It's easier to not challenge what we're doing. If it's not broke, let's not, try to mess anything up. So I think this is big in terms of living a life of intentionality, is being on the front edge of always kind of evaluating your life, evaluating your relationships, evaluating the things around you, and being able to challenge that process continually to keep growing. And so I think this is a huge one just as an individual. Absolutely. Once you say things are good, that leads to passivity, and that leads to, being really reactive to all of a sudden you're not going to do anything until something goes really wrong, until all of a sudden there's a big fire and you have to put it out, and that puts you into action. So I think this is a big one for sure.
It just goes to that idea, Jonathan, right? You can be master and commander of your destiny. Yeah. Or you can be a victim of circumstance.
Yeah.
Which choice do you want to make? And when we're staying engaged in that, challenging the process, we're staying visionary. We're saying, I want to influence that future.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to arrive at a place that I want to set the stage for arriving at, instead of just arriving someplace, because we all will.
Right.
Okay. We are all going to be at a different place tomorrow than the place that we're in today. The question is that place where you wanted to arrive or not? Yeah.
I love that question. I love that picture. I think that's a very tangible thing to take away. And something that I'm just so, passionate about and love talking about on the show is just like, do you have a vision for what you want your life to be about? And are you actually taking the steps and living an intentional life on a day-to-day basis to live that? Do you know where you want to go? Do you know what kind of life in legacy that you want to live, or that you want to have? And then are you actually being willing to put in the work daily to stay focused on that and to challenge the current process and to grow? And then at the end of your life, if you've continuously done that and you've continuously grown, then you're going to end up in this place where you have this life that you're extremely proud of, because you were the master and commander of it, instead of just being like, oh my gosh, I just let life happen to me all these years and this isn't where I wanted it to go.
Correct.
So thanks for sharing that. I think that's amazing. Let's go ahead and get into the last two. So we got enable others to act. Walk me through it.
Enabling others is about giving people what they need to be able to be successful. Leadership appears to be the art of getting other people to want to do what you believe needs to be done. Well, getting them to want to do what you believe needs to be done means that they need to be empowered, enabled, equipped to actually be able to do it. Just because I say, okay, take that hill, as a leader, I've inspired a shared vision, I've challenged the process, we're going to take this hill, we're going to the top of it. That doesn't mean that they have the tools that they need. It doesn't mean that they have the confidence that they need. It doesn't mean that I've created the right environment for them to collaborate. They've got to be in a place where they feel like, okay, I've got everything that I need to be able to do it. Because how many times have we said, I'm not going to do that because I don't know how? I can't imagine anybody out there that's listening today, Jonathan, right, who hasn't had that moment of where they've said, no, I can't do that because I don't know how.
Right.
Well, our job as leaders is to make sure they do know how, and to give them the tools and skills that are necessary to make that happen. So leaders, right, and at its essence, right, enabling others to act, is just raising up other leaders.
Yeah.
Equipping them to do the same things that we're doing.
Right.
And so it's so important, because there's nothing worse than being given a job and then feeling like you got one arm tied behind your back.
For sure.
Trying to accomplish what it was you were challenged to accomplish.
Yeah.
Right?
So what if I, as the leader, can do it better, or what if I can do it faster?
Oh, great question. That falls into the little thing we call the 4 whys of delegation.
Right.
Okay, what inhibits us from effectively delegating to other people? Well, at the end of the day, Jonathan, it's not what we get done as leaders that matters. It's what the leaders that we raise up behind us. You used the word legacy a few minutes ago. Okay, our legacy as leaders, again, is how we really equip others to take on. And if we're doing it right, hopefully the leaders we're raising up are going to accomplish far more than we ever accomplished.
Yeah.
And learning to let go is one of the biggest things, because you can't effectively equip people if you won't delegate effectively. Oh, I'll just do it myself. Yeah, I can get it done faster. Or I can do it better than they can. That's denying them the opportunity to learn and grow. We think it's a selfless act. Nah, it's a selfish act.
Wow.
That one hurts, doesn't it?
Yeah, for sure. That's a great point. Because there are a lot of times you think, oh, this would be way easier on my team if I just did it real quick. I'll just jump in because I know how to do it. I've done this before. And you just jump in and do it. But it's actually, I love how you said that, it's actually robbing them the opportunity to grow as a person and as a leader themselves.
That's correct. Now, do we have to demonstrate, back to modeling the way? And the answer is yeah, okay. But not at the expense of continuing to develop their ability to do it.
Yeah.
Right? And every time we do, it opens up doors for us to continue to develop and work on higher level tasks and more important things as well.
Yep. Another key distinction there for sure.
Correct.
For sure. Awesome. Well, hit me with the last one. We got to encourage the heart.
All right. So encouraging the heart. And by the way, Jonathan, right, you talked about, recognizing these 5 and where are your strengths. When I first got exposed to this content over 20 years ago, and I was leading a fairly sizable team, right? My team made it clear to me, Mike, you do not encourage the heart very well. Okay. Encouraging the heart is touching the heart of the people. Okay. Getting people engaged to want to go that extra mile. It's about recognizing people. It's about celebrating. It's about having fun. Okay. It's about engaging the heart of people. Because there's a little saying that goes, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And at its essence, as we look at these 5 exemplary practices, the first 3, modeling the way, inspiring shared vision, challenging the process, they're what I call the head practices.
Yeah.
You can do those out of the head. You can't enable others to act and encourage the heart from the head. It's got to come from here. Okay, it's got to come from the heart. Leaders are lovers. Now, I might get laughed out of a corporate boardroom for making that statement,
Right.
but I genuinely believe that you can't be an effective leader if you don't genuinely care about the people you're trying to lead.
That's so true.
And encouraging the heart is about letting people see that they can they know that you genuinely care about them because you're paying attention. We need more than just a paycheck. We need a lot more than just a paycheck.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in any organization, in any context, encouraging the heart is an essential part of getting others to move from being somebody that has to somebody that volunteers to.
Yeah.
And so that's what encouraging the heart is all about.
Yeah, that's really good. How do you develop, and I think you just touched on this briefly, but how do you develop that care and that love for the people that you're leading? If this is something you're not very good at, how do you really have that genuine care?
Yeah, great question, Jonathan. I think you just have to start practicing it. This is one of those things that says, okay, if we'll just start trying to do things, it's amazing how the heart will come along. Okay, this is an area where you start doing good things. If you're not a particularly generous individual, you want to become generous, just start giving things away. Okay, it's amazing what the transformation will do to your heart as you go through and you do that in meaningful and intentional ways. Sometimes, right, the little phrase, fake it until you make it.
Yeah.
Sometimes we need that one. We just have to will ourselves into some new behaviors that may not be natural. And the more we behave that way, all of a sudden the thoughts and feelings around those kinds of behaviors start to come to us.
Yeah.
Right? Other times we want to focus on changing that thought process. For me, how did I get better at encouraging the heart? Well, I got rid of a lie. Right? The lie said the reason I'm lousy at it is because I don't need it. Oh, that was bunk. Absolute bunk. When I started to actually acknowledge, wait a minute, I do have a need for my heart to be encouraged as well. And to recognize that and to see it and therefore be willing to tap into the fact that it was a legitimate need of my followers as well, I got a lot better at doing it. Because I just committed to practicing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So can all 5 of these exemplary practices be developed, Jonathan? I think so.
Yes.
Do some of us have natural giftedness in some of them that and not necessarily the same level of giftedness in others? You bet. But I haven't met a leader yet that's exemplary at all 5 of them.
Yeah.
Right? We can all grow. We can all develop. It's just a question of where we're starting from and how hard we're willing to work to move the needle.
Yes. That's really good because, I mean, yeah, and that's where it takes intentionality. And it takes intentionality to actually bring awareness, which I love how these 5 practices really do just help bring awareness to the gaps. It's just a very kind of clear thing of like, okay, yeah, I can see I do too well, and these other 3 I need to really work on. So I love just the practicality of how the 5 bring in the gaps. And then it takes intentionality from that point of saying, okay, I do want to, grow in encouraging the heart. And so now I got to put together a plan to actually put this into practice. And I think those tools that you just gave are great. And I think you also mentioned just being really aware and like having a curiosity about the people that you're with and really looking for their gifts and looking for the ways that they're excelling and, exceeding expectations. You have to be on the lookout for those things. And I think once you find them, then you really start to grow that care for them as well. When you really start to focus not on all the problems that they bring, but the possibilities and the potential that they have. Once you start to see those things, then there's so much more to actually encourage. If you don't ever pay attention to that, you got nothing to say, So I think that's huge, but just bringing intentionality to one of these practices at a time, if you feel like that's where your gap is, figuring out, a plan where you can say, okay, I'm going to just focus on this one. And the mind is amazing. Once you do that and you really start to focus on it, you just get better and you start to care about it more and it becomes a little more natural over time.
Correct. Yeah. Exactly.
It's
no different than any physical skill, right?
Yeah.
It's about moving it from being something that you're struggling at, trying to get better at, as we say, moving from that level of consciously competent to being unconsciously competent, to being able to do it without even thinking about it.
Right. Yeah.
And we can indeed develop, and development of leadership skill is a lifelong journey.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm starting my 5th decade of intentionally working at growing my own leadership skills. And every day with every client, I have the opportunity to get better as a leader.
Yeah.
And I think that your listeners have the same opportunity, regardless of where they are in their lives, regardless of what they're doing, regardless of the leadership situations that they find themselves in.
Mm-hmm.
They all have the opportunity to grow as leaders with intentionality.
Yes.
And they'll never arrive.
Right. It's a lifelong process.
Yep,
lifelong.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, just real quick, last question. I would love to hear, so, and this is kind of the premise of the book, but if you have a leadership challenge, so you have a situation where you want to get somebody to want to do what you believe needs to be done, how do you then just take these 5 to that like specific situation and just kind of like filter it through these 5 to come up with your game plan?
Great question. And Jonathan, what we try to do is take the first question we ask ourselves is, what would we typically do in this circumstance? Right? What's our autopilot reaction? Oh, I see this every day. What do I just naturally go do in that circumstance? The first thing that you have to learn to do is create a speed bump.
Yeah.
That says, stop, wait a minute. I'm not going to allow myself to go into autopilot to solve this leadership challenge the way that I've always solved it. And then you say, what would I typically do? Now we pull it through our 5 exemplary practices and say, if we really wanted a great outcome, how might each of these 5 practices contribute? And in some scenarios, you may come up with the way that all 5 of them contribute. Other ones may be very, very cut and dry. Nope, this situation, this one's all about challenging the process. How do we do this effectively?
Yeah.
Okay, but then you come up with an experiment.
Okay.
Now that I've thought this through, now I'm going to go put it to the test. Let's go see if I can get a different result in this leadership scenario than I typically would get by virtue of doing something different from what I've typically done.
Right.
What can you learn from your experiments?
Yeah.
That's the key. And being willing to stop long enough to ask the question, how do these exemplary practices play? It's the most important step in the whole process.
For sure. I just love that, those steps of just being aware of what you normally do and then filtering it through the 5. It just makes it so much more practical where you really can approach situations with a little more confidence, honestly, of like that you're making a good leadership decision because you've now taken the time to filter it through the 5 exemplary practices. And for me, it was really cool when, you kind of helped me see this of maybe you tried modeling the way. And in the past, I would have been like, that's it. He clearly doesn't want to do this, or, this situation is stuck or hopeless. And that would have been my first reaction. But then you were like hitting, okay, well, let's come back. And are you doing these other 4? Because if you haven't tried any of these other 4, then you can't say it's game over.
There you go.
So it honestly was really cool, though, because it helped me to feel way more empowered as a leader to not see situations as dead until I really have kind of filtered it through all 5 and tried, like you said, an experiment of each one of these. And because every person is unique, they may need encouragement in this process, in this situation instead of just modeling the way, or they may need to be enabled to act instead of just trying to be motivated or just inspired, and so I just love how this just is a tangible way of leading. And like Mike mentioned earlier, guys, that this applies to situations all throughout your life. It can be with your relationships, it can be at work, with friends, with parents, with your kids, with your spouses. And that's why it's really cool. So if you really can develop this as a lifestyle of filtering your situations through these 5 practices, I think you'll see just a monumental shift in your influence and just your relationships.
There you go.
For sure. Awesome, Mike. Well, thanks so much. It's just so good to have you on here. Thank you for just sharing your wisdom and your passion with us. How can we as a community on the Intentional Man podcast support you? What's going on in your life right now?
Well, again, the biggest thing, Jonathan, is just talking about leadership, okay, and asking people, what are they doing, what's going on, and I love to meet people who want to talk about this. As you said, you appreciate my passion. This is who I am. It's part of my identity, and so I'm always interested in meeting people who would like to engage in this further. I have a great 15-week development program that we run in semesters. So we start in January. We'll start the next one. We're starting this week, as a matter of fact. They're all full up. We'll start again in May, and then another semester in September of intentional development program. And we've got several other offerings as well. So if you know people out there who are interested in intentionally developing their leadership skill, or you're part of a company that's looking for somebody that could come in and help them do that. Those are the kinds of people that I would love the opportunity to meet and talk with.
Awesome.
As we continue to expand our offerings and get to a place where we're having the chance to influence more leaders than the groups that we're currently doing.
Yeah, definitely. And I have personally been through it, and it was really impactful for me, as I'm sure you picked up through this. And Mike just does an amazing job with it. So I'd highly recommend looking into it if that's something you're looking for. Where do people find you? How do they contact you? What would be the easiest way to do that?
Yep. So my company is called ML3. All right. And you can see that back there on the wall behind me. But ML3 Solutions is my website. So www.ml3solutions.com. You're welcome to go there, get some information. And there's all kinds of ways on the site to link to me to get in contact with me that we might have a chance to sit down and have a conversation.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, there you go. ML3 Solutions. Awesome. Well, thanks, Mike, again for being here. Appreciate you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Jonathan. Take care.
All right. Thank you for tuning in to the Intentional Man podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and you would like to support the show, please share it with others, post about it on social media, and leave a rating and review. If you are someone who is looking to take your life to the next level, accelerate your success, and live more intentionally, I would love to help. Shoot me a text at 970-430-6085, and we could schedule a time to meet to discuss your vision and your goals. Again, that is 970-430-6085. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, build a life that matters by living intentionally.